confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I've said that before, Jose, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep on saying it because it's something that needs to be said, heard, and remembered. I'm going to go from there straight to Jemmy Ekotny, such as it is anymore. I used to think it was one of the really prime features of Tall Tales. I would take the editorials from each of the daily newspapers, go through them with my blue pencil as though I were a former English teacher, which of course I am, mark them up, decide which of the two were the better one, and give that one the coveted blue star. I haven't given a blue star for about 2 weeks. It's easy. I'm more likely to give a blue star to somebody that doesn't work for one of the newspapers than to any of these guys because they either don't know or don't care about good editorial writing. The Post has completely abandoned the discipline. They haven't written an editorial for a couple of months. The Daily News keeps coming up with pap that they put in a news hole where editorials belong, but they're not really editorials. Today is a fine example. Our View. School days are here again. Help students prepare. Man, you got to fasten your seatbelt when you read this kind of stuff.
There is so much political fodder that they could write about.
Exactly.
I think they choose not to.
They chose to find the most meaningless pablum-like subject to write, so they don't have to write about, like when Helen Middlebrook says the 10 hidden stories that are lurking out there for somebody to write. But no one will. Certainly not these guys. The punchline in this editorial, the start of the school year can be exciting and expensive time for all families, but thankfully on Guam, a little help is never too far away. Take advantage of the many ways our community has to help get students ready for their first day of school. And then inside it, I should have marked this up. As the old saying goes, this is inside the editorial, it takes a village to raise a child. No, only if you're Hillary Clinton does it take a village to raise a child, and only if you're a Marxist does it take a village to raise a child. What Hillary was thinking of was Public Child Care Center number 492 or whatever. You know, because parents have no business raising children, having any role in their education. That's the job of the state, so the kids don't get the wrong idea about things, that they get properly educated and indoctrinated on the right way of thinking, talking, and acting. Okay, so much for that. I challenged everyone yesterday. I had the front page of the Daily Post yesterday. I'm going to show it to you again and ask you, who is the man in the middle? Here it is. You can see the governor is in front, and then beside her is the Lieutenant Governor, Josh Tenorio. And then you see Nancy Pelosi, and between Josh and Nancy, to the rear, you see a bald head, a shaved head gentleman. I wonder what he's doing in that picture. I wondered who he is, why he's in that picture. And I was hoping that someone would take a peek at the hard copy of the Post and call me up or put it on Facebook and tell me who that guy is and why is he in the picture. So I'm going to keep asking until I find out the answer to that question. Okay, so we can go to the card next. And this is what I've got on the card for today. Of course, I've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And I have Underwood versus the Department of Defense. Radu and Kaneshiro versus babies. Michael San Nicolas versus construction. And then Vanessa versus the Blacklist 12, also known as the Blacklist Dozen, also known as the Dirty Dozen. Yeah, also known as the Heroes of Tall Tales. And then I've got some stuff that's been on the card for a long time that I've never gotten to. Yeah, okay, so once again, systemic racism. You see the rice, you look at it, and I'm going to tell you the rice is orange. And you're going to say, but that's red rice. It's what we call red rice. And I'm going to say, I don't care what you call it. It's not red, it's orange. It's orange rice. And then you're going to come back and say, well, you know, everybody knows that it's red rice. And I'm going to tell you, that's the narrative. The truth is that the rice is orange. And people are so supportive of the narrative that they'll criticize you if you come out and tell the truth. This is very much like saying that killing a helpless, killing a helpless, innocent person, or human inside the womb is women's health care. It's the same thing. It's not killing something. It's woman's health care. And we learned from Vanessa Williams that it is equality. That if women can't kill helpless, innocent humans inside their bodies, it's a breach of the concept of equality. Color is the rice. The rice is orange. The narrative says it's red.
Well, we learned the other day that the ACLU supports abortion, calling it supports women's reproductive health care, which tells me that apparently it's acceptable to classify one group of human beings as not valid or worthy for life.
Absolutely.
I mean, I thought the ACLU was about all humanity and validating everybody as a person except for the unborn human.
I am so disappointed in the ACLU. When I came back after law school, there was an ACLU chapter here. And the first person asked me if I wanted to sign up. I said, sure. And I gave him a check for $25. It fizzled out in about 3 years. But back in those days, it was, you know, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, things like that. And the ACLU was not seen as the newsletter or the news arm of the Democrat Party, which it has become nowadays. You got a really radical left-wing cause. The ACLU says, let us take a crack at it. We'll do that one for you. But they are not the ACLU. They're not a civil liberties union in any sense of the word. Okay, so systemic racism. Thank you very much, Paul Zerzan, for giving me that analogy that helps me explain the difference between the narrative and the truth. We go from there to the Public Law 3634 section of the agenda of the card, and that's the part where I examine the notices of meetings of boards and commissions. Every board or commission must publish a notice 7 days and 2 days before the meeting Under Public Law 36-34, the notice of meeting must contain the agenda of the meeting, and the agenda must be in sufficient detail to put the reader on notice as to what will be discussed at the meeting. We have serial violators. The Visitors Bureau never gets it right. The Guam Preservation Trust now has come up with a new way to try to short-circuit the process. And as my analysis is, it doesn't work. So we start out with number 1.0, call to order, roll call. 2.0, approval of minutes for July 13. Old business, 3.1, board orientation, so far so good. 4.0, new business, UOG Endowment Foundation's 40th anniversary, okay. 5.0, committee reports, budget and finance report. Refer to report. 5.2, Architects Committee report. Refer to report. And that's the rest of the agenda. Refer to report. Does that put anybody on notice of what's going to be discussed?
Nothing.
No, but it's easier for the person who puts the agenda together. You know, all you got to do is just refer to report once and then just keep copying and pasting it till you're done. And also it costs a little bit less to publish this notice. Now, the fact that a litigious challenger of anything that you do is going to come along and raise a challenge based on that, well, the cost of doing business.
That's what you would call a well-rounded agenda, because it's very circular.
It is indeed. And where's our Attorney General here? This is his fault. You know, he should be doing the same thing I do every day. And when he sees something wrong, he doesn't have to make a federal case out of it. He calls up the agency and says, hey, this is what you got to do.
Correct it.
Correct it. And don't do that anymore. You can't do that. But he's leaving on a jet plane, I guess. I hope he is. I wish him bon voyage. So let's see. I've got Underwood versus the Department of Defense. And I thought for once there would be something that Underwood said that did not embody his agenda. And we got all the way to the end before it happened. Underwood, Pelosi's Taiwan trip after Guam stops shows island is linchpin for U.S. military. An expected visit to Taiwan by Speaker Nancy Pelosi following her brief stopover on Guam on her way to Asia has resulted in reactions around the region and in D.C., including from a new local group that's focusing on issues such as this. After China's government condemned the potential visit with veiled threats of military response, and the White House reiterated it did not support the trip, the Post reached out to former Delegate Robert Underwood, apparently whose telephone was broken, who could not be contacted with email, WhatsApp, or Instagram. They had to reach out to him.
Well, the only reason why they reached out to him is because all the other names were blacked out in Magic Marker.
Yeah. The Post reached out to former Delegate Robert Underwood, who is currently serving as the chairperson of the recently formed Pacific Center for Island Security, a group that no one has ever heard of before, but we do know that Robert's the president.
Is this a branch of G4?
Probably. Speaker Pelosi's brief chat to Guam is more than just refueling, Underwood said. Guam is the linchpin to the projection of American power in this part of the world. It is followed up by a stopover in Taiwan. The importance of Guam is, if it's followed up by a stopover in Taiwan, the importance of Guam is exponentially emphasized. Well, she did stop until she's in Taiwan right now. But Underwood also admitted that the Biden administration's expressed concern about the visit is a polite way of saying they wish she wouldn't go, before recognizing Pelosi as one of the strongest leaders in America today. Oh, this is Robert, one of the strongest leaders in America today. Underwood also admitted that the Biden administration expressed concern about the visit is a polite way of saying they wish she wouldn't go, before recognizing Pelosi as one of the strongest leaders in America today. She will not be swayed by threats, but people should not underestimate her understanding of the strategic picture in any part of the world or her determination, Underwood said, also noting Pelosi is still the highest-ranking American official to visit Ukraine after the Russian invasion. Yeah, I understand that Vice President Kamala Harris, it was suggested that she go, but she said, well, I haven't been to Europe. That borders on sarcasm, doesn't it, Jose? Yeah.
It's dripping with.
It borders on sarcasm.
Oh.
Yeah. The expected visit is eliciting such strong and official reactions because it can be seen as contradicting the so-called, quote, one China policy, a bilateral agreement between the United States and China that Taiwan is not recognized as a sovereign nation, but as part of China. However, Underwood, said the trip technically does not violate the agreement. Speaker Pelosi's visit should be treated the same as House Speaker Newt Gingrich's visit to Taiwan over 25 years ago, Underwood said. The policy is one China, two systems. The U.S. is not recognizing Taiwan or offering a direct guarantee of Taiwan's defense, although the attention will be seen as a boost to Taiwan's future. When he was Guam's delegate to the House, Underwood visited Taiwan as part of a congressional delegation and later visited Beijing and met with its government's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. But once again, local residents find themselves living on an island that is viewed as a military threat by some of America's most active adversaries. Now, that's not Underwood. That's the Post. Now, here's Robert. Quote, for the people of Guam, it enhances our standing as a target for Chinese missiles. Hopefully, our political leaders take full advantage of this to resolve long-standing issues with the Department of Defense, Underwood said. Long-standing issues with the Department of Defense, like what, that tree up in where they're going to build a machine gun range? Yeah. You know, he can't resist. They gave him a really favorable story here, which, as I read it, to me seems pretextual. All of a sudden, Robert is the president of where is it? I can't even find it here. Oh yeah, Robert is the chairperson of the Pacific Center for Island Security. Now,
is that a government institution, or is that
that's Robert.
Think tank? Is that what they call them?
Well, I think probably a grievance politics mill is more like what it's going to be, right? Here the United States is treating us badly again, right?
A reason to reach out.
Exactly. Yeah, now Robert almost got it right. He said, for the people of Guam, it enhances our standing as a target for Chinese missiles. And I said, you know, from the get-go, our pitch ought to be, we are defending America. We're out here in the front lines defending the 50 states, the rest of America. And we're good at it. and we welcome the challenge. We went eye to eye with Kim Jong-un. He blinked first. We can handle typhoons, Japanese you name it, and we can do it. And we're the front lines of American defense. The better things are for us, the better we're going to be at defending you. So if you can remember that, there are some things that you could do to help us. That should be our pitch. That, Guam has been colonized for 4 million years, and the usual stuff that Robert Bavacqua, Hope Cristobal, Laura Sauter, that game how, the Chamorros have been marginalized. Chamorros are an oppressed people, and on and on and on with that, Okay, so much for Robert. You got your name in the paper, Robert. Congratulations. Then we go to Radu and Kaneshiro versus babies. Hawaii doctors seek to maintain injunction on in-person mandate for abortion services. The right to an abortion has always been a contentious topic on Guam, and the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision revoking the right in the United States has only fanned the flames around the issue. At least for now, the procedure remains legal under Guam law, but those same laws also contain barriers to women seeking abortion services. There is no doctor on Guam to perform abortions. Let me correct that sentence. There is no doctor on Guam who wants to perform abortions. I'm not a doctor, and I've already explained why I'm not a doctor, why I'm a lawyer instead. I tried to get into med school. My handwriting wasn't bad enough, so I had to go to law school.
Bob, I know I'm interrupting you again, but can I correct another statement that happened before there?
Yes.
It says here, but the same laws also contain barriers to women seeking abortion services. It is supposed to say these same laws contain protections for unborn babies seeking birth.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's an article.
It is.
That's what an article says.
Really. Yeah, it's just the bias is overwhelming unless you know what you're reading, what you're talking about, and how to think for yourself. So the sentence says there's no doctor on Guam to perform abortions, and pleading ignorance that I'm not a doctor, but I suspect that every OB-GYN on Guam is qualified to perform an abortion. And I suspect that probably every OB-GYN who has been in practice long enough has performed an abortion when it became necessary to save the mother's life. So it's not to say there's no doctor on Guam to perform abortions. They don't want to because it's too gruesome. It's too morally corrupting. It's too infamous. It's too embarrassing. It's too shameful. So they'll try to get some out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits to do it by telemedicine. Did you ever see the movie Music Man, Jose? You remember when Professor, what was his name, came to town? The music maker.
Music Man, yeah.
Yeah, he warned the townspeople about pool. And he warned them that there would be out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits coming in to teach the kids to play pool. And before you knew it, the kids would be walking around with a copy of Captain Billy's Whiz-Bang in their back pockets. Yeah, so I've had it in for out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits since about 1963 when that movie first came out. Yeah, so that's what they are. That's what Radu and Kaneshiro are. They're out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits, but I'll get to that in a minute. There is no doctor in Guam willing to perform abortions, leaving off-island travel, which may be difficult for some, or telemedicine is the only alternatives for anyone wanting the procedure. Guam law contains a consultation requirement that imposes a 24-hour waiting period on abortions and requires that a woman must be provided certain information, quote, in person. 2 Hawaii-based doctors with licenses to practice on Guam, Dr. Shandini Radu and Dr. Bliss Kaneshiro, challenged the in-person mandate last year at the district court. The American Civil Liberties Union filed a suit on behalf of the doctors. Now, let me stop here and tell you what Paul Harvey referred to as the rest of the story. These 2 are abortionists from Honolulu. They don't live here. They don't practice here. They were lured here by Calamity Jane and our pro-abortion governor, who went out searching all over for an abortionist, and this was the best they could do. So these 2 doctors came to Guam and got admitted to practice medicine on the island, although my suspicion is they never saw patient number 1. But they did that so they would have standing to be plaintiffs in this lawsuit against our government on this issue that is pending before the Ninth Circuit right now. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back to the out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Looking to continue your education? Guam Community College is hosting its Fall 2022 Enrollment Fair at the Micronesia Mall Center Court on Sunday, August 7th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come see what programs GCC has to offer and watch the Macy's and GCC Back to School Fashion Show for the latest trends to start your school year right.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So the 2 out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits.
888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Quiet. We are on Facebook, Jose.
We're on now.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, at least on my, I can't get it on my laptop, but I can get it on my iPad. Give me a second here, folks, to get set up on Facebook.
That quote, the out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits.
Uh-huh.
I remember now that song, You Got Trouble. You got trouble.
Trouble right here in River City.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. It starts with P, and it rhymes with,
Ooh.
yeah, trouble right here in River City.
Professor Harold Hill.
That's the guy. Just let me get signed up here. Yeah, okay. I need those comments, fans. Yeah, I can see I got some fun. I got some already, right? Comments. So the 2 out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits came out here, got admitted to practice just so they could be plaintiffs in that ACLU suit. They were lured here by Calamity Jane and Lou Leon Guerrero, and they can now, there is the district court ruled in their favor, saying that the in-person consultation wasn't necessary. The case is on appeal to the Ninth Circuit. Our Attorney General appealed it to the Ninth Circuit. Now, what those 2 out-of-town Jaspers do is they do chemical abortions. And this is how chemical abortions work. There are 2 different kinds of pills, each of which has an unpronounceable name. And a woman who's in the early stages of pregnancy takes the first pill, and it starves that human inside her to death. So the baby inside her dies. A couple days later, she takes another pill that causes expulsion of the dead baby, along with a lot of blood and I don't know what else. Yeah, and that's the reason that they came out here. This is what is now called women's health care, folks. If you didn't know the meaning of women's health care, that's a fine example. This is not a surgical abortion, it's a chemical abortion brought to you by Redo, Kaneshiro, Calamity Jane, and our governor. According to the documents filed in the lawsuit, the mandate makes it impossible to administer medication abortion through telemedicine. The district court ordered that local officials be temporarily enjoined from enforcing the mandate as the case proceeded, allowing telemedicine abortions to take place for the time being. So all of you folks who are interested in women's health, this is your chance to get women's health care. So if you're not pregnant, try to become pregnant so you can take advantage of women's health care. I mean, isn't that how it works, Jose?
Yeah, obviously, and reproductive health care.
Reproductive health care. Yeah, you know, when I crossed the line and got eligible for Medicare, I got a notice, you are now eligible for a colonoscopy that Medicare will pay for. I couldn't wait. The Office of the Attorney General appealed the decision to the Ninth Circuit. Before the decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the Supreme Court had established abortion as a right prior to viability of the fetus outside the womb. While states could regulate abortions even in the early stages of pregnancy, they could not impose an undue burden on exercising the right. That's Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Undue burden. The Dobbs decision did away with existing precedent and placed the issue of abortion in the hands of lawmakers. In the wake of the decision, the Office of Attorney General requested that the Ninth Circuit reverse the district court's preliminary injunction, citing the district court's reliance on now overruled decisions. Lawyers for Redo and Kaneshiro argued that the Office of Attorney General's request should be denied for two reasons. First, according to the lawyers, the court record is sufficiently developed for the Ninth Circuit to affirm the preliminary injunction independent of the Dobbs decision, that the in-person requirement is not rationally related to a legitimate government interest. Second, even if the Ninth Circuit were inclined to remand the preliminary injunction to the district court to reconsider, vacating the injunction prior to remand is unnecessary and unwarranted given the likelihood of plaintiff's success on their alternative claim and the undisputed irreparable harm that would result. Now, that's one of the things that you must plead for an injunction. Irreparable harm will result if you don't get your injunction. The irreparable harm will be that women are not going to be able to chemically kill innocent humans. You know, it's just amazing, you know, that what the law can do with words and just turn things inside out. The lawsuit brought two claims against the in-person mandate. The first was that the mandate imposed an undue burden. That's Planned Parenthood. The second was that the mandate violated patients' right to due process and equal protection as guaranteed by the 14th Amendment because it lacks a rational basis, lawyers for the doctors said. Now, I've explained this before. When you're talking equal protection and substantive due process, there are three types of scrutiny: strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and rational state basis. Rational state basis means that the state can advance a potentially rational basis for doing what they are asking the court to do, and that it is reasonably tailored to be successful, and a couple of other qualifications. It's a very, very low standard. And the district court found no rational basis the first time around, and also found a violation of Roe and Casey. But now the two out-of-town Jaspers and pinchback suits are saying, well, even in the face of Dobbs, still no rational basis. The lawyer stated that the plaintiffs have sufficient likelihood of success. With respect to the claims, there is no rational basis for the law that requires abortion patients to make an in-person visit. Oh my gosh. To obtain the state-mandated information from a person patently unqualified to provide it. In response, the OAG stated that the plaintiffs had not demonstrated a likelihood of success as to warrant entitlement to the injunction. The existence of a rational basis for the in-person requirement means that plaintiff appellees will lose on the merits. The mere fact that the question is arguable tilts the analysis in favor of the government. An injunction is inappropriate. Now, as I remember, the magistrate, Michael Berdalio, ruled against Canishero and Radu. And Judge Gatewood overruled him and ruled in favor. Reasonable minds may differ. Lawyers for the Y doctor state that the Ninth Circuit should deny the OAG's request to reverse the injunction, instead set a briefing schedule to argue the merits of the OAG appeal, or keep the preliminary injunction in place while remanding the issue to the district court to consider whether the alternative grounds for an injunction exist. The OAG stated that the injunction based on now overruled cases must be vacated and the status quo reinstated. The parties can present their arguments regarding the appropriateness of a preliminary injunction post-Dobbs to the district court for first review, the OAG concluded. Well, I got my fingers crossed. You know, we don't need no stinking chemical abortions. Okay, I noticed somebody, it's probably one of the out-of-town Jaspers calling long distance from Honolulu. No, it's another Joe. Another Joe is early today, and he wants to talk about telemedicine and the governor. Go ahead, another Joe.
Bob, so I was looking at the ads, the political campaign for the governor, and she puts one of her points as advancement in telemedicine. Is this what they're talking about? The chemical abortion, when they talk about advancement in telemedicine?
They're talking about something much broader than that. Let's say that one of our surgeons here, let's say an oncologist here, is doing a really complicated surgery dealing with a tumor on someone's duodenum. Do you know what a duodenum is, Jose? I'm not sure I do either. I better leave it alone. Yeah, on someone's small intestine, and it's complicated. And there is a doctor somewhere off island that has done 1 million of these things and is recognized as the platinum standard for this kind of surgery. Well, with telemedicine, you hook the cameras up and that doctor it's almost like the doctor's in the surgery with our surgeon. He can see exactly what's going on. He can talk to the surgeon. He can say, don't cut quite so fast, or a little bit to your right, or slow down, or something like that. That's telemedicine. So it allows us to take advantage of specialists off island. The whole thing with Kaneshiro and Radu is really not the reason we have it, and I am going to label it a misuse of telemedicine for the reasons that I just mentioned, another Joe. But of course, I think our governor probably sees it exactly the opposite. Yeah, telemedicine's really good because you could use it for women's reproductive health to kill babies, and you could use it for other stuff too, but we don't pay much attention to that. Right, another Joe?
Well, they could argue that, hey, we're losing revenue because you're giving the business to off-island doctors.
Well, I don't think it displaces doctors off island, except abortionists, which is fine, because I think for the other ones, you got to have somebody here with with a knife in his hand during the surgery or whatever. And it can be if any kind of medical procedure. You know, let's say we have a patient that has a really strange rash, and I'm not talking about monkeypox, it has a really strange rash, and our local dermatologist say, boy, I've never seen anything like that. You know, there's a guy who practices medicine in Prague who has written the book on strange rashes. Let's see if we can get him on a telemedicine hookup. We do, and the guy from we set up all of the gear, etc., and the gentleman from Prague checks in. Where's my rim shot, Jose? The gentleman from Prague checks in. And helps out with the surgery.
It's a geography joke, people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Got it, another Joe?
Thanks a good, Bob, and I'll just keep listening to your WISE program. Thank you.
My WISE program. Okay. Thank you, another Joe.
You know, I'm just thinking about that the abortion or chemical abortion being called telemedicine is another euphemism.
It is.
Because nothing in the definition of the reasons for medicine apply to killing somebody.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
We really got to take these media or these reporters to task for the way they frame a story.
And it's everywhere all the time. Yeah. And we talk about it all the time on Talk. We catch them. I don't know if anybody else catches them, but we do.
And I'm not asking them to tell the story from my perspective. Tell the story from one that doesn't have to use euphemisms or language to create subterfuge or even deceive people into what is really going on.
Exactly. And to kind of condition the market for something that perhaps they individually favor. Now, if I were the reporter, I would have written that story about tele-executions.
That's what it is.
Because that's what it is, yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Michael San Nicolas versus construction. I think we got a break coming up, right, Jose?
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
All right, here we go. Back to Tall Tales here. Next item on the card, Michael San Nicolas versus construction. We're going to be talking about H-2 workers here. Now, H-2 is a section in the Immigration and Nationality Act, something like, I'm going to give you an example. This is an aggregate, something like 27 United States Code, Section 1435A12H2. It's a section in the law. And H2 workers are workers that are non-immigrant aliens. They come to the United States not as immigrants, not as people who will be able to stay indefinitely, not as people who will be able to become naturalized citizens, but people who come only to do a job. Now, back in the days when I had a pretty good handle on immigration law, in order to bring in H-2 workers, there was a double temporary requirement. The H-2 worker had to be temporarily employed on a temporary job. You couldn't bring an H-2 worker in, put him to work for XYZ construction company for the next 20 years, no matter what jobs came up, et cetera. It was a job-by-job determination. And in order to perfect a petition for H-2 workers, a labor certification had to be obtained. This is the Department of Labor. And what an employer had to do is he had to show that he searched for local workers to fill those positions, put ads in the paper, et cetera. And there were no local workers available, and bringing alien labor in would not have an adverse effect on alien labor or local wages. And it was the U.S. Department of Labor that did it then. The U.S. Department of Labor has delegated that authority to our own Department of Labor, which is really something. I don't know if this has ever happened anywhere else in the country, but it's quite an accomplishment for us. So we had a real dislocation in alien labor here about 5 years ago, because it used to be pretty easy for construction companies to file, to get their labor certification, to file for H-2 workers. The petitions were routinely granted, et cetera. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And Contractors Association and several contractors even brought suit against the government. But the government's position was, no, we didn't change the law. We haven't changed anything. We're just applying the law as written. And this went on for quite some time. The law has now been changed, and the law allows H-2 workers to come to work on Defense Department projects, primarily building the new Marine Corps base, facilities on Anderson and Naval Station that relate to that. And that was in place for a couple years. And then we got clever and said, can we expand that a little bit, Congress? Could we say construction projects dealing with the Department of Defense construction projects, and then also other construction projects that are related to the military buildup, things like housing or things like that? And they said yes, and that's where we are now. So if you're building a housing that is arguably going to house military dependents, you probably can get H-2 labor. That's the way I understand it. Now, this article that ran in the Daily News said that Michael San Nicolas, for reasons we aren't aware of, went to his tool cabinet and took out this large monkey wrench and found this H-2 labor machine and tossed it into the machine. And it almost destroyed the machine, but cooler heads got to him, and he pulled the monkey wrench back just in time. But we don't know why he did it. So here's the story. Guam delegate Mike San Nicolas last month withdrew one of his amendments to the House 2023 defense budget after the Guam Department of Labor reported that San Nicolas' proposal would cripple Guam construction projects by making it more expensive and difficult to use skilled foreign labor here. According to the Department of Labor, apparently there are no people that work at the Department of Labor. There's just this building that has the ability to speak. According to the Department of Labor, the existing provisions for the recruitment and employment of H-2B laborers on Guam, which are scheduled to expire at the end of 2023, should be extended through 2029 with no changes or additional requirements for employers. The defense budget currently authorizes Guam to hire a large number of foreign workers under H-2B visas in order to build military bases and related facilities in connection with the military buildup. It also allows Guam businesses to hire H-2B workers for some civilian construction and infrastructure projects. According to a report prepared by the Labor Department, San Nicolas' amendment to the defense budget included additional policy changes sought by the U.S. Department of Labor, apparently aimed at preventing labor abuse and human trafficking in the H-2B labor program. The additional requirements for H-2B workers would necessarily crack down on Guam, which has not experienced the same labor abuses as CNMI, according to the Guam Labor Department. You know, I think the CNMI leads us on all counts when it comes to governmental abuses. They're so far ahead of us. And they started so much later. But boy, did they catch up fast. I had a couple of longtime friends up in the CNMI, and they were boasting, we're not going to make the same mistakes that Guam made. We're going to do it better.
Bigger.
Uh-huh. And you remember our saying used to be, Guam is good. Their saying was, Saipan mas malik. Saipan is better. Yeah. Well, when it comes to stuff like having a corrupt governor, they're certainly better at it than we are. We're trying hard, but we can't match them. Okay, we find many of the provisions to be, this is our statement, overly burdensome without justification based on Guam's history of good program management and relatively low rate of overstays, human trafficking, and H-2B related labor violations, the Labor Department's report states. For example, San Nicolas proposed requiring companies that employ H-2B workers to provide free housing for all their workers, including those who don't need visas. So if you're a large company with maybe 30 or 40 regular workers and you wanted to bring in 5 H-2s, you would not only have to provide H-2s free housing, but all of those 30 or 40 people that work for you. Wow. Said Guam Department of Labor Director David Del Isola. It was devastating. Well, finally, they outed somebody here. They outed David Del Isola instead of just letting the Labor Department do all the talking. But that's really something, isn't it? You have a company that's all American citizens and permanent residents. And let's say that you're doing a job that requires some high-powered electrical specialty, and you can't find one here on the island. So you go to the H-2 market and you find an H-2 worker who can do this work. You bring him back, and you got to provide housing for him, and you got to provide housing for every other oscillating Richard that works for your company. Yeah, so which means companies can't afford it. They'll go out of business. They won't do that it's just all kinds of bad things are going to happen. Okay, let's break for the big 7-inning stretch. For the big halftime show, and we'll come back to David Del Isola.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The impeachment vote costs his incumbency. On Jack Callahan, Fox News, Michigan Congressman Peter Meijer, who'd voted to impeach former President Trump, has conceded defeat in his primary election to John Gibbs, who had served in the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Trump administration and had the endorsement of the former president. So far, 6 of the 10 GOP congressmen who voted for impeachment won't be returning. 2 others were on Tuesday's primary ballot in Washington state. Dan Newhouse and Jamie Herrera Butler have finished in the top 2 in their primaries and will advance to November. A political newcomer has been nominated to run for governor of Michigan.
Republican Tudor Dixon will face Democrat Gretchen Whitmer, who seeks a second term as governor. Dixon says the difference is simple.
This is going to be an epic battle between a conservative businesswoman and mother and a far-left birthing parent and career politician.
Over in Kansas, Mark Holland won the Democratic primary for Senate and will take on GOP incumbent Jerry Moran.
Fox's Gernal Scott. In Missouri, Attorney General Eric Schmidt wins the GOP nomination to run for the Senate.
Missouri needs a senator who wakes up every day to fight for them and their future. I will be that senator. I will be your voice.
Trudy Bush Valentine wins the Democrat Senate nomination in Missouri. Voters in Kansas have rejected an amendment to the state's constitution that would have removed the right to get an abortion from it. House Speaker Pelosi has met in Taipei with Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen, telling her the U.S. will not abandon her country in the face of Chinese aggression. The man who called Dodger baseball games for 67 years has died. Hall of Fame broadcaster Vin Scully, called the poet laureate of baseball, passed away at his home in L.A. on Tuesday. Vin Scully was 94. America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
The man charged with the murderous July 4th shooting at a parade in suburban Chicago is due in court today.
Robert Cremo is facing 117 felony charges that stem from a grand jury's indictment, in addition to 7 previously filed murder charges. The indictment includes 48 counts of attempted murder and 48 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, which prosecutors say represent, quote, each victim who was struck by a bullet, bullet fragment, or shrapnel. They also say Cremo, who is 21, admitted to the 4th of July parade shooting when police arrested him after an hours-long search. Investigators believe Cremo briefly considered a second attack on an Independence Day celebration in Madison, Wisconsin, before returning to Illinois, where he was arrested. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Pointing to the weekend assassination of al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri as proof the United States hasn't lost its focus or the ability to strike terrorists in the region, the Biden administration says it validates the president's decision to end 2 decades of fighting in Afghanistan with the withdrawal from that country of U.S. forces a year ago. Critics say it shows the Taliban is once again harboring terrorists in Afghanistan. Floodwaters beginning to recede in some parts of eastern Kentucky.
With hundreds still unaccounted for, rescue crews are working around the clock by land and air to get those stranded to safety. This helicopter rescue shows just how isolated some folks are, whose only way out is being airlifted. Many more are cut off from the outside world without cell signal, power, and in many cases, water. As recovery efforts intensify, officials fear the death toll will likely go up from where it currently stands at 37 killed. Beyond that, a lot of the ground out here very loose from all of that rain. The fear of falling power poles and trees is very relevant.
Fox's Jeff Paul in Kentucky reports the chance of rain returns on Thursday. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Bring it.
Boss 104, The Point, and Star 101 are bringing you back to the 80s and 90s throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Anigua this Saturday, August 6th.
Come down and get on the dance floor as I, DJ Daryl Lazama, get on the turntables, giving you the best of the 80s, 90s, and more.
Star 101, The Point, and Boss 104 will be in the house.
Yo, DJ, pump it up some more.
Plus, we have all kinds of cool stuff to give to you.
Free food giveaways,
Buckets of beer,
T-shirts, and hourly cash prizes.
the 90s throwdown dance off.
Get back to the 80s and 90s throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Anigua behind Circle K Beachside this Saturday, August 6th.
The party is from 8 p.m. to midnight, so come down and get your groove on.
Special thanks to Lolita Cabot of Holiday Realty and JV International, the 80s and 90s throwback this Saturday at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill. Party starts at about 8 p.m. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Great halftime show there. Those of you who happen to stay tuned to Facebook during the halftime show instead of going and getting a bag of popcorn or something like that, saw the Tall Tales fashion show where our star modeled the new Tall Tales t-shirt, and I'm going to see if I can get him to do a repeat performance. Can you do that, Jose?
It was a very short runway. I'm gonna post a selfie I took.
Okay.
On the board there.
You going to put that on Facebook? All right, then we won't have the fashion show. Maybe we'll have another fashion show tomorrow. I think, you're developing a fan base. I think they're going to really appreciate it.
I got a very small wardrobe.
Okay, so I'm going to go back then to Michael San Nicolas and his monkey wrench. So we're talking about H-2B workers, an amendment to the National Defense Act that Michael made that would have greatly increased requirements for bringing H-2B workers here. As an example, providing free housing for every construction worker, citizen, permanent resident, or H-2B workers. And here's a quote from David Del Isola, the Director of Labor. So if you're a large company with maybe 30 or 40 regular workers, and you wanted to bring in 5 H-2s, you would not only have to provide the H-2s free housing, but all those 30 or 40 people that work for you, said Guam Department of Labor Director. He's not the Department of Labor, he's Director of Labor, David Del Isola. It was devastating. Now, one of our posters here said something about inspecting. See if I can find that. Yeah. Joseph Ngoko, evidently, DOE are not conducting inspections of H-2 quarters and living conditions. How do you come to that conclusion?
Maybe because they protested that they would have to if the law went through.
Well, you have to right now for H-2 workers. So there's nothing in this story that says that the conditions are inadequate or unsatisfactory or anything like that. Interesting. According to the Department of Labor, the San Nicolas Amendment would increase labor and construction costs for Guam residents, discourage the construction of housing and affordable housing, and hamper Guam's economic recovery from the pandemic. Quote, increased costs and regulations on the military side. Those contractors pass through those costs to the military, Del Isola said. On the civilian side, if there's a dramatic increase in costs and regulation, the civilians get the added costs until they're priced out of the market, that is. And if the costs are too extraordinary, then contractors aren't going to do civilian projects because they can't afford it. Del Isola said after San Nicolas withdrew his House amendment, the Senate changed its version of the defense budget to extend the H-2B provisions for Guam and the CNMI to 2029. We dodged a bullet on that one, didn't we? Who says that nobody ever pays any attention to our non-voting delegate in Congress? When it comes to screwing things up, he apparently has great power. Okay, that doesn't mean the battle's over, Del Isola said, noting Congress still could change the defense budget bill and the H-2 provisions before it passes. We withdrew the amendment, working in consultation with the Senate on a different approach, San Nicolas said Monday. He declined to comment further on the issue. Del Isola said there are currently about 3,000 H-2B workers in Guam, and the number is expected to grow to 6,500 next year and peak at about 8,000 during the height of construction for the military buildup. It's not cheap to bring in H-2s, Del Isola said. It's what's needed. It's not what we want. How are we supposed to handle $10+ billion in construction on our little island of $150,000? And this has been something that we've been talking about for a long, long time. You know, for 60 years. We bring in H-2 workers, and then we get the idea, you know, why are we doing that when there are unemployed folks on Guam? We should train our local people so they could do the construction work. Well, the problem is this, that construction work is sporadic, cyclical, and volatile. It's not steady. So, you know, this year maybe you need 1,000 construction workers. Construction increases, like we saw the time when, you know, when we used to say that the territorial bird of Guam down in San Vitores was the crane, because so many buildings were under construction, the construction crane. So how do you handle the peaks when you need to go from, you know, a few hundred to several thousand almost overnight? And if you had a local construction force that could handle the peak, what do you do when you get to the valleys? It just isn't a tenable situation. Now, in the U.S. and the mainland, I knew folks, in fact, I even did some construction work myself in college summer vacations. And guys that work construction in Wisconsin, you know, may be working on a job 400 miles away from home. They'll bid on jobs so far away that the guys only get to come home on weekends. So there's a large mobile construction force, labor force, that can handle the peaks and valleys. We can't do that here. We can't have somebody drive up from 400 miles away and do our work.
I also went to school as a military dependent. There were kids in my school that their parents were construction workers and followed these bases around during certain buildups. Because I went to the last base was Fort Drum, used to be Camp Drum. So it was interesting to know that we had a bunch of migrant construction workers, along with us migrant kids, also in the military.
Yeah.
Because you had to follow where the jobs were.
Exactly.
They didn't always stay in one place.
Yeah, and we can't do that here. So, Jose, do we want to put your one of your profile pictures on the screen? Yeah, there it is. Jose modeling the Tall Tales T-shirt. You'll notice it says, I'm a tailgater. Then we got the red Tall Tales logo. And then above that, that white beard up there, that's Jose.
It doesn't come with a shirt.
It does not come with a shirt. You got to grow your own white beard. Or white mustache, as the case may be, right? Thank you, Jose. You're a great model. Nice work. Okay, so much for David Del Isola and the Department of Labor. We go from there to Vanessa versus the Blacklist Dozen, the Blacklist 12, the Dirty Dozen. And I'm going to start out. I've got a lot of materials here that keeps popping up on social media. We heard the statement from the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party basically said, we really like Vanessa. Vanessa didn't do anything wrong. We're not even going to mention the 12 people that she canceled. You know, just tough it out, grow a pair. It's not a big deal. Forget about it. The Republicans came out with a short, very well-worded statement about party unity. The governor has her own idea of unity, and it goes like this. This ran on KOAM. Governor Leon Guerrero today defended Williams and the party, noting certainly Vanessa has made it very clear that this is not a Democrat Party position. This is her personal conviction, and this is her personal opinion, and this is her personal choice of who she's going to vote for. You think maybe Vanessa's got a little bit too personal?
Governor's getting a little too personal.
Yeah, and the governor said other people shouldn't be talking about this because it's a personnel. No, she didn't say that. Then the governor goes on to assign blame. She says, it's sad that the Republicans took a very sacred democratic process of our people and our island and spun it to make it look and discredit this woman.
Gotta be kidding me. Did she really say
That's
that?
Exactly what she said.
Come on, Guam, you're smarter than this.
It's sad that the Republicans took a very sacred Democrat process, sacred, of course. You know what the definition of sacred is? It used to mean something that had a religious dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it's anything the Democrats want.
You know, I've always took my black magic marker and struck out the candidates as part of my sacred tradition.
Exactly.
In the voting booth.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll read it again. This is Governor Leon Guerrero. It's sad that the Republicans took a very sacred democratic process of our people and our island and spun it to make it look and discredit this woman. It's just amazing. I'm going to read it again tomorrow. I mean, it's just unforgettable how anybody could be. Is she out of touch, or is she deluding herself into thinking, well, I'm the governor, and anything I say, people are going to believe because I'm the governor, and I never lied to them except the last time.
And you Democrat candidates that were blacklisted by the Council of the Guam Democratic Party should take heed that not even your governor is defending you.
Exactly. She also pushed back on Republicans, emphasizing that they are a united party, they being Democrats. The implication being that with primary challenges in both the gubernatorial and congressional races, the Democrats are splintered. The Republicans are more splintered, said the governor. You know, the Camacho group, the Calvo group, you know, those guys are splintered for years. Our Democrat Party right now is united. You remember Star Trek? Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here. Wow. Yeah, and then she goes on to say, we have the support of all factions of our Democrat Party. We have the Frank Ogan support. We have the Carl Gutierrez support. We have the Robert Underwood support. Well, you probably got the Robert Underwood support, and you probably got the Carl Gutierrez support. I saw a video of Frank Ogan standing on beside the road with Felix and Tony waving at the traffic as it went by.
And I think he just finished a podcast with him as well.
Yeah, and did a podcast with him besides that. They're not splintered, though. Yeah.
I like how she talks about unity, but talks about all the factions in the Democratic Party. Yeah. And she named factions that are last names of people, not voting blocks.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sad that the Republicans took a very sacred Democrat tradition of our people and our island and spun it to make it look and discredit this woman. So the issue is the woman. It's not the Dirty Dozen. It's not a party official being disloyal to the party. It's not about winning the election. It's only about the woman, Vanessa Williams.
And if they really are defending Vanessa Williams, then why did they ask her to resign? And none of this silly business that she did it on her own.
No.
Because nobody does what she does, blacks out listed people, and then decides to resign later on.
No.
If they supported her, they would have kept her on as counsel.
Exactly. Well, I stumbled in my files. I stumbled across something else that shows that the governor really doesn't know what she's talking about. And this goes back to the debates. And she said, the debate also hosted a platform for topics unrelated to health care. In the climactic third round of the debate, the congressman's ethics investigation briefly became the topic of interest after Leon Guerrero was asked about Bill 317, a bill to publicize physicians' legal standing in line with their profession. Heavy with emotion, Congressman San Nicolas said, unsubstantiated claims have no business being out there in ways that is going to be harmful to you or your families. No business. In her rebuttal, Leon Guerrero stayed on the topic of the investigations, emphasizing that the findings of the congressman's investigations were substantiated. Now, tie a string around your brain, substantiated. Now, here's a quote from the governor. The report says they have found substantive evidence, said Leon Guerrero. No, that's not what the report said. The report said that their findings were based on substantial evidence. Substantive and substantial are not the same things. Substantive gets you into the 5 categories of evidence, like documentary evidence, testamentary evidence, etc. It's got absolutely nothing to do with San Nicolas's investigation, where they said there was substantive evidence, and I have read the definition. It says the kind of evidence that a reasonable person knowing all the facts could rely on. However, another person with complete understanding of facts, etc., might take a different view. So it's not persuasive at all. It's reasonable minds could differ on the value of substantive evidence. That's what it means. So if there's some substantive, as you were, substantial evidence, if the findings are based on substantive evidence, that doesn't mean that anything was substantiated. But it's too hard. That substantiated and substantive sound so much alike. How could you expect the governor to know the difference when she can come up with whoppers like the one that she did for Vanessa Williams? You can't trust the governor. That's it. I mean, it's over.
That was the second one in the row then, because right before that happened, they asked her that question on the bill about providing information, and she went off on 291. And before they stopped her and said, Governor, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
It was almost as if it was automatic.
Yeah. So given what she said about, and the ironic thing is the Republicans have not said anything. In fact, I suspect there are Republicans out in the wings are saying, where in the hell are we on this? We should be hammering on this. We should be making hay on this. This is a great campaign issue. What are we doing with it? Because they haven't done anything except come up with a very polite, inoffensive statement of their own view of party unity. And what does she do? She turns the whole thing into the defense of Vanessa Williams and an attack on Republicans. And I just showed you that she doesn't even understand the difference between substantive and substantial. So that's it. I mean, from now on, the rule on Tall Tales is we don't believe anything the governor said, because there's no reason to find any credibility in anything she says at all. I don't give people the benefit of the doubt. You know that's against the rules on Tall Tales. Because when you say, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, what that really means is the facts don't match up with what you're going to do for the person. You're doing something for the person that factually he shouldn't be merit. I don't do that. But I do start out with the idea that ordinarily people tell the truth unless I can catch them in a lie or catch them in something that causes me to doubt their credibility. We jumped off that bridge today. This attack on the Republicans in order to defend Vanessa Williams is a bridge too far. Okay, Tom Shea, who is not known for being a taciturn, keep-it-to-yourself kind of guy, has weighed in on Facebook. Let's head for Wrigley Field, and we'll come back to Tom Shea.
Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Yeah, here we are. So, you know, the name Lourdes comes from France, the city of Lourdes, France, right? The miracle of Lourdes. And it's a very common, very usual name in Spanish-speaking countries. But in Spanish-speaking countries, it doesn't come out as Lourdes, it comes out as Lourdes, right? Zangin on usa ifino tomorrow, it's a naan Lourdes. Lourdes.
L-E-W-D?
Lootdes.
Oh.
Yeah, and Sally Aquino makes a bilingual play on words there by saying, Lourdes is very good at shifting blame for her numerous faux pas. Yeah, Lourdes. Yeah, it's a good way of using the Chamorro pronunciation of her name. Okay, back to Tom Shea. To my friends and patients and attention voters, you and I are not Democratic leaders. We are voters, and we can vote how we want, when we want. It's inappropriate for a Democrat attorney to cross out our Democrat candidates like this. I am not a Democrat or Republican leader. Even if I was, I would not do this. Get out and vote. You decide yourself. And then there's a picture of the ballot with Vanessa's handiwork on it, and then a pullout showing the names of the Dirty Dozen. And I'm going to read the names of the senatorial candidates, and I got to tell you, I'm really kind of tempted here. I'm tempted to go over and vote in the Democrat Party, just for spite. And I'd vote for San Nicolas. I'd vote for these 10. The 10 of the 12 Dirty Dozen, just for spite. And Talina Nelson is the only anti-abortion person running for Washington, so that's a feather in her cap, too. So here's the Dirty Dozen. Speaker Therese Tetlahi, Jonathan Savaris, Chris Barnett, Senator Joe San Augustine, Senator Amanda Shelton, John Ananich, Dave Duenas, Franklin Bunker Mano, and Armando Dominguez. Guys, you need to make hay on this. You should wear this like a badge of honor, because that's exactly what it is. Anybody that Vanessa Williams doesn't like is okay in my book. Shea goes on to say this. This is so unethical. This attorney Williams is the same attorney very close to the governor, Jane Flores, Anita Areola, etc. She is also one of the attorneys that, together with the ACLU attorneys, represented those two Hawaii abortionist doctors. That'd be the out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits. In their lawsuit challenging the district court the law that does not allow telemedicine consults for medication abortions. Jane Flores helped these two Hawaii doctors get licensed to practice medicine on Guam. It sure does seem to be a violation of certain provisions of the Code of Professional Responsibility applicable to all lawyers licensed to practice on Guam. If someone filed an ethics complaint with the Bar Association, the bar ethics attorney would immediately start his investigation, then send his findings to the Guam Bar President and the Supreme Court. So lawyers do have a duty of loyalty to their clients, and one would think that if Vanessa had a client, it would be the Democrat Party. And if you examine the activities of the Democrat Party's modus operandi is to get people elected to public office. So helping people get elected to public office would seem to be the mission of the party. An attorney being loyal to that party and to its mission would seem to have to use her efforts to foster that aim, and anything that she did to counteract that or hamper it would seem to be disloyal rather than loyal. Interesting question. Maybe somebody will raise it. Okay, and I want to spend some more time with Vanessa here. But to lay the proper foundation, I've got an article from Tom Woods. Actually, it's one of his commercials, but We do our own commercials now, don't we, Jose? Yeah. And this is what Tom Wood says. Remember the old days when the words, quote, Yale School of Medicine might have impressed you? Here's one of their faculty. And the name of the faculty member is Kim Sue, MD, PhD, doubly dangerous. And she says, POTUS, that's our president of the United States, working while having COVID infection epitomizes white supremacy urgency in the workplace. Boo! Sets a bad example for everyone that he cannot rest. COVID infection is serious, symptoms debilitating for many, and people should take time off without working through it. I can't disagree with anything she said, but what does this have to do with white supremacy? But of course, we know the rule. If you can't put something like that in there, no one's going to pay any attention to it. You know, I can go out and talk about the insular cases all day, but until I said racist, nobody's going to pay any attention. POTUS, working while having COVID infection, epitomizes white supremacy urgency in the workplace. So I'm using this to lay the foundation that there are certain kinds of devotion to ideals that take on a quasi-religious dimension themselves, almost a cult-like devotion to the message, so that it comes ahead of everything else. So I don't know what's going through Vanessa Williams's head, but when she singled out the Dirty Dozen, this may have been a case of exactly what I'm talking about. To her, the whole anti-abortion woke ideology is so important that it trumps everything else. Her duties as a lawyer, her membership in the Democratic, all of that stuff is secondary because promoting abortion is all there is. That's the most important. So she sent an email to Lena and Amanda Shelton, a couple of anti-aborts. And here's what she said. I'm sorry, not an email, WhatsApp or whatever. She said, we need to stop sexual assaults from happening in the first place. For the love of children, stop focusing on penalties after the fact. The police and prosecutors are literally telling you it does not help. Policymakers need to roll up their sleeves and do the real work to make long-term investments in education, including sex education and consent, family planning, universal child care, and poverty prevention, so we can stop the cycle of abuse and the second highest rape rate in the country. Asking to rewrite the criminal code at the end of the term is meaningless. Also, stop focusing on dumb, chaotic bills like 291. The Heartbeat Act.
How dare she attack those women?
Yeah. So what she's saying, she's saying it's the other half of that agenda. If you can't do all of these things, it's better just to kill the babies. If you can't comply with her laundry list, the baby's better off not being born. I wonder how many times Vanessa Williams saw the movie It's a Wonderful Life. You know, they ought to make her watch it every single day. All right, here's another one. Abortion is health care, and health care should be legal and accessible to all. Saying reproductive health care should be illegal because pregnant women cannot be trusted to make decisions about their own bodies is misogyny, hatred of women. Saying reproductive health care should be illegal because pregnant people cannot be trusted to make decisions about their own bodies is misogyny. So she loads up the question. Nobody ever said that. No, I don't know of a single anti-abortion person who said, you know, women are so stupid. They can't decide what to do with their own body, so we got it regulated by law. I've never heard anyone say that.
Not women.
No.
Pregnant people.
Pregnant people.
Which is kind of misogynist by definition.
Exactly, yeah. Saying reproductive health care should be illegal because pregnant people cannot be trusted to make decisions about their own bodies is misogyny at its worst. Guam is the second highest rate of rape in the entire country. Okay. And we would stop rapists if a rapist knew that every woman that he raped was going to have an abortion.
I think that rate would go up.
It would go down, according to her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's tying the two together. Saying reproductive health care should be illegal because pregnant people cannot be trusted to make decisions about their own bodies is misogyny at its worst. Guam is the second highest rate of rape in the entire country. So we should go from one to the other, take the rape rate down by allowing reproductive health care. Forcing pregnancy under any circumstance is a gross, disgusting violation of another's body equivalent to assault. But it is a special threat to the children who have had their period and can get pregnant in a place where they are more likely to be raped than almost anywhere else in this entire country.
Wow. You know, on behalf of a lot of people who were conceived through rape and are alive today, apologize for Vanessa Williams for invalidating your life.
Exactly. That guy Ryan Baumberger is a classic example. Yeah. So now, taking all of this into context, apparently what we need to get the rape rate down is take these teenage girls and give them hormone blockers. So that they don't, mature enough to have that first period. That if you tie it all together, right? Bill 291 is just another weapon for misogyny and just for the war on women, but an assault on little girls. Vote them out. Yeah.
There's another word for that kind of speech. That's hyperbole. It's,
at best.
At best.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just, if we want to even take that apart, a good example is the rape they tried to hide by making a big brouhaha over about a 10-year-old getting an abortion, and she wasn't able to get one. Well, let's talk about the rape that you guys are hiding and not telling who was a rapist is, because they knew who it was.
Yeah.
There is a good point to be made about a rapist wanting abortion clinics because they can hide their crime.
Exactly. Yeah. The evidence is...
It's been there.
Is obviously destroyed. Yeah, for sure. Jose, let's go to Churchill Downs, then we'll come back to Vanessa.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Looking to continue your education? Guam Community College is hosting its Fall 2022 Enrollment Fair at the Micronesia Mall Center Court on Sunday, August 7th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come see what programs GCC has to offer and watch the Macy's and GCC Back to School Fashion Show for the latest trends to start your school year right.
Here's another text or WhatsApp or whatever from Vanessa. forcing women to carry an unwanted pregnancy is wrong. Supporters of Bill 291 either haven't read it, don't understand it, or think women do not have the right to privacy in health care. What do you think, Jose? Which is it? That the supporters of 291 haven't read it, don't understand it, or think that women do not have the right to privacy in health care?
None of the above.
Yeah. But it's got to be one of those three things. That's the agenda.
Again, the bill was written by a woman, co-sponsored by a woman. So who is she talking about?
Exactly. Yeah.
Their ignorance, right?
She goes on to say, now who is they? We don't know if that's one person or 100 people, because they has, like so many other things, has lost its meaning. They are using deceptive and inaccurate images and wording like hearts and heartbeats, even life and child, that are completely unscientific. Vanessa, the scientist, to get around the law and the fact that a fetal heartbeat, as you were a fetal heart, is not fully formed until 10 weeks. So hang on, guys, be a little patient. The belief that a person is formed at any moment prior to scientific viability is just that, a belief, faith in something unproven. Now, you see the guys going through the scientific workup of the whole thing, and they'll tell you that when the male sperm penetrates the female ovum, it then becomes a zygote. And that zygote has a full set of DNA, all 46 pairs of chromosomes. It does not have the same 46 chromosomes as the mother or the father. It is completely separate. And if it isn't human, how would we characterize it? It will not mature into a duck or a fish or a bird. So if you want to be scientific, you have to say that the human being has a continuum of statements of development, starting out with that zygote and winding up with some octogenarian like me that's still stumbling around, right?
You definitely physiologically are not the same person you were at year one. Things changed and developed.
Yeah.
And I'm
probably not any smarter, but go ahead.
the other terminology she uses there, viability, is also the same argument Governor Lou Leon-Grow did as a private citizen when she said that viability doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because a child who was tagged for abortion who survives is still invalid.
Yeah.
Viable or not.
Cost-benefit analysis comes into play here.
And will she apply the same definition of viability to somebody she deems is not worth capable of things, like someone who doesn't have legs when they're born?
Well, or how about 12 people that Vanessa Williams doesn't like? Look out, guys. Be careful. Be careful if you go into a room and she's the only one in there.
Marked unviable for the Democratic Party.
Exactly. Yeah. So you start out with that zygote, and it becomes a blastopore, a blastomere. It continues to develop, and it doesn't take very long till it starts showing human features. It's not just this multi-cell being. It begins showing human features, and it is human. Now, if you want to argue about whether or not that human is a person, that probably gets into the law as much as it does medicine. But it's damn sure a human. It can't be anything else. It is a human separate from either of its two parents. And it has two parents from the moment that egg is fertilized. That's the science involved here. If you really want to try one on, Vanessa, try this one on. Anyone who studies the development of humans from the zygote to the fetus to the birth, etc., would tell you that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Oh, there's a mouthful for you, right? Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Ontogeny means the development of that particular item. Phylogeny means the evolutionary development of that particular species. Now, according to the theory of evolution, we all started out as one-cell entities. So ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. But the phylogeny is clearly human. It can't be anything else unless you want to be the governor and completely throw any sense of logical reasoning out the window and blame it on the Republicans. So that's the latest on Vanessa. I got a feeling that we'll be hearing more from Vanessa, and I think I owe it to you to read Vanessa's letter of resignation one more time, if I can find it. Where is it? Yeah, unfortunately, I can't find it. I'll have to bring it in tomorrow. But it's it just classic example of what we're talking about here, about a particular mindset that has so bought into an ideology, a dogma, or whatever, that it seems to put that in front of everything else that the person has to deal with.
And this is connected to those two doctors in Hawaii trying to put that injunction in because of information given to the mother, the expectant mother, the woman who's pregnant. It is not about choice. It's about forcing a procedure on somebody so they don't know what's actually happening, because what the injunction does is prevents information to be given so that somebody can make a sound decision.
Exactly.
And a lot of what Vanessa Williams puts out here in all of her paragraphs can be debunked, also be just countered with real factual information.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, let me go through Facebook here. We got about 7 more minutes here. Let's see what folks on Facebook are talking about. We didn't talk about much today, but we went in at it in certain depth. And we've got Johnny Utah here today. And Bonnie says China was pretending that they would stop Pelosi, but that is all rhetoric and trying to put fear in the minds of Taiwan people. Johnny Utah comes back and says, Bonnie, she hasn't left Taiwan yet. The talk since yesterday is that they will hit her when she leaves. Rico comes back and says, William Edgeworth says, Johnny Utah, are harpies easy to hit out of the air? You remember the Wizard of Oz? You remember the harpies? Yeah, who told us that that when Nancy landed on the runway here in Guam, that the code name for her flight was Broomstick 1?
That's right.
Yeah. And then we got Johnny Utah saying, Rico, nope, but I wouldn't put it past the Chinese to have kamikaze. Johnny Utah. And then we've got Sakman Mario. Hey, good afternoon, Mario. I saw Sakman Tony the other night at the reunion for the class of 1967.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of them are still around. and they have a reunion, Jose, for all of the schools here on Guam. One big reunion for all of them. And even anybody from Guam who went to school off island, they recognize them too. It was really, really fun. And I saw some of my former students. They were all glad to see me, probably glad I'm not their teacher anymore. And it was a lot of fun. And it was kind of a strange thing for me because I went to my own 65th last year back in the States. And somehow I had a completely different feeling with the 67 gang than I had with my own class. You know,
You're a little younger than your class.
I beg your pardon?
You're a little younger than your class.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Uh-huh. So, I don't know. I mean, it felt a little bit more homey, maybe.
So you taught some of them from the class of 67?
I did.
Wow. Yep, that would make sense.
Yeah, my rap was that I was at GW High School from 1963 to 1981. And the kids got out in 3 years. I was slow. It took me 8 years. Yeah. Anyhow, where was I here? Oh, yeah, and I saw Sockman Mario's brother, Sockman Tony, at that reunion.
You would have thought you saw Sockman Mario.
Yeah, really. And let's see, Bonnie Suba. Johnny Utah, I doubt that China will do anything. They already have too much business in America. Getting all oil from Biden and Pelosi, Biden, Schumer, McConnell, Harris all have large money-making businesses, investments with China. And then Johnny Utah comes back, I'm going to agree to disagree. Well, you can't do that on Tall Tales, Johnny Utah. We don't allow that. That's like giving people the benefit of the doubt. If anything, an invasion of Taiwan happens this month, but I think they're going to take a shot at her plane. Well, that would be dramatic, wouldn't it? Bonnie Suba comes back. Johnny Utah could very well happen, like fire over the wing or swing their jet fiery tails past our window. Maybe they could fly past her plane and do the same thing that Democrat on the baseball team did to the Republican dugout.
International sign of peace?
Yeah.
Are you Top Gun aficionados?
Yeah, then we've got Elizabeth Mendiola, who's just watching. Good going, Elizabeth. Bonnie says, I'm just sick of this administration doing insider training, which was illegal, sending oil to our enemies, etc. And then Bonnie says, abortions are big money. My concern for the human being either way. Jose Martinez, Kyle said, shakes the cage for the record.
I've had some people comment that they're not sure what he's saying during the morning show promo that we play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what they think he says.
You could tell me that off the air, huh? This would be Kyle Mandabat. Yeah. He's another guy that used to work at a different radio station and brought his show to the point. Okay, we got to go, folks. I got to say goodbye to our president. Here it goes. Let's go, Brandon!
KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Vote to protect abortion. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Primary election voters in Kansas have rejected a measure that would have changed the state's constitution to ensure it did not grant a right to abortion in the state. That effectively blocks any effort to ban the procedure in Kansas. The vote is the first abortion question to be voted on since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in late June. Republican voters in Michigan have picked businesswoman Tudor Dixon as their candidate for governor.
Thank you, Michigan. Thank you for believing in me and yourselves. And thank you for standing for what's right and what matters.
Dixon had the backing of former President Trump. She'll face incumbent Governor Gretchen Whitmer in November. Missouri's Attorney General Eric Schmidt has won that state's Republican primary for the U.S. Senate, beating former Governor Eric Greitens.
Not too far from here, I worked at Grant's Farm while in college, giving tours and taking out the trash. And don't we need a little bit more of that in Washington right now?
Trudy Bush Valentine has won the Democrat Senate primary in Missouri. In Arizona, Trump-backed gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake charging some elections officials screwed up on Tuesday.
You know what's going on in Pinal County? They knew we were going to have record turnout because we aren't going to take it anymore. And 1 hour into voting, they ran out of ballots. What the hell's going on?
Her opponent, Karen Taylor Robson, endorsed by former Vice President Pence, accusing Lake of making vague accusations about voter fraud. Taylor leads Lake by less than 3%, with about 70% of the votes counted. Blake Masters has won the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Arizona. He'll face former astronaut and incumbent Senator Mark Kelly in the fall. One of the most legendary voices in sports has been silenced. Hall of Fame play-by-play baseball announcer Vin Scully has died at the age of 94. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcast.